The Money Moon, a Romance, by Jeffery Farnol. Chapter 4. How Small Porges, in looking for a fortune for another, found an uncle for himself instead. The meeting of George Bellew and Small Porges, as he afterward came to be called, was sudden, precipitate, and wholly unexpected, and it befell on this wise. Bellew had opened his knapsack, had fished thence cheese, clasp knife, and a crusty loaf of bread, and having exerted himself so far, had fallen a-thinking or a-dreaming in his characteristic attitude, i.e., on the flat of his back, when he was aware of a crash in the hedge above, and then of something that hurtled past him, all arms and legs, that rolled over 2 or 3 times, and eventually brought up in a sitting posture. And, lifting a lazy head, Bellew observed that it was a boy. He was a very diminutive boy with a round head covered with coppery curls, a boy who stared at Bellew out of a pair of very round, blue eyes, while he tenderly cherished a knee and an elbow. He had been on the brink of tears for a moment, but meeting Bellew's quizzical gaze, he manfully repressed the weakness, and, lifting the small and somewhat weather-beaten cap that found a precarious perch at the back of his curly head, he gravely wished Bellew "Good afternoon." "Well met, my Lord Chesterfield," nodded Bellew, returning the salute. "Are you hurt?"
"Just a bit, on the elbow, but my name's George."
"Why, so is mine," said Bellew.
"Though they call me Georgy Porgy."
"Of course they do," nodded Bellew. "They used to call me the same, once upon a time. Georgy Porgy, pudding and pie, kissed the girls and made them cry, though I never did anything of the kind. One doesn't do that sort of thing when one is young, and wise, that comes later, and brings its own care, and heartbreak." Here Bellew sighed, and hacked a piece from the loaf with the clasp knife. "Are you hungry, Georgy Porgy?" he inquired, glancing up at the boy who had risen and was removing some of the soil and dust from his small person with his cap.
"Yes, I am."
"Then here is bread, and cheese, and bottled stout, so fall to, good comrade."
"Thank you, but I've got a piece of bread and jam in my bundle."
"Bundle?"
"I dropped it as I came through the hedge. I'll get it."
And as he spoke he turned, and climbing up the bank, presently came back with a very small bundle that dangled from the end of a very long stick, and, seating himself beside Bellew, he proceeded to open it. There, sure enough, was the bread and jam in question, seemingly a little the worse for wear and tear, for Bellew observed various articles adhering to it, amongst other things a battered penknife, and a top. These, however, were readily removed, and Georgy Porgy fell to with excellent appetite. "And pray," inquired Bellew, after they had munched silently together some while, "pray where might you be going?"
"I don't know yet,"
answered Georgy Porgy with a shake of his curls. "Good again!" exclaimed Bellew, "neither do I."
"Though I've been thinking of Africa,"
continued his diminutive companion, turning the remains of the bread and jam over and over thoughtfully. "Africa!" repeated Bellew, staring. "That's quite a goodish step from here."
"Yes,"
sighed Georgy Porgy.
"but you see, there's gold there. Oh, lots of it. They dig it out of the ground with shovels, you know. Old Adam told me 'bout it, and it's gold I'm looking for, you see. I'm trying to find a fortune."
"I beg your pardon?" said Bellew.
"Money, you know,"
explained Georgy Porgy with a patient sigh.
"Pounds, and shillings, and banknotes, in a sack if I can get them."
"And what does such a very small Georgy Porgy want so much money for?"
"Well, it's for my auntie, you know, so she won't have to sell her house and go away from Dapplemere. She was telling me, last night, when I was in bed. She always comes to tuck me up, you know, and she told me she was afraid we'd have to sell Dapplemere, and go to live somewhere else. So I asked why, and she said 'cause she hadn't any money, and, "Oh, Georgie," she said, "oh, Georgie, if we could only find enough money to pay off the
"Mortgage?" suggested Bellew at a venture.
Yes, that's it. But how did you know?"
"Never mind how, go on with your tale, Georgy Porgy."
"If we could only find enough money, or somebody would leave us a fortune," she said, and she was crying too, 'cause I felt a tear fall on me, you know. "So this morning I got up awful early, and made myself a bundle on a stick, like Dick Whittington had when he left home, and I started off to find a fortune."
"I see," nodded Bellew.
"But I haven't found anything yet,"
said Georgy Porgy with a long sigh.
"I suppose money takes a lot of looking for, doesn't it?"
"Sometimes," Bellew answered. "And do you live alone with your auntie then, Georgy Porgy?"
"Yes. Most boys live with their mothers, but that's where I'm different. I don't need one, 'cause I've got my Auntie Anthea."
"Anthea," repeated Bellew thoughtfully. Hereupon they fell silent, Bellew watching the smoke curl up from his pipe into the warm, still air, and Georgy Porgy watching him with very thoughtful eyes, and a somewhat troubled brow, as if turning over some weighty matter in his mind. At last he spoke.
"Please,"
said he with a sudden diffidence,
"where do you live?"
"Live?" repeated Bellew, smiling. "Under my hat. Here, there, and everywhere, which means nowhere in particular."
"But, I mean, where is your home?"
"My home?" said Bellew, exhaling a great cloud of smoke. "My home lies beyond the bounding billow."
"That sounds an awful long way off."
"It is an awful long way off."
"And where do you sleep while you're here?"
"Anywhere they'll let me. Tonight I shall sleep at some inn, I suppose, if I can find one, if not, under a hedge, or hayrick."
"Oh, haven't you got any home of your own, then, here?"
"No."
"And you're not going home just yet, I mean across the bounding billow?"
"Not yet."
"Then, please."
The small boy's voice was suddenly tremulous and eager, and he laid a little grimy hand upon Bellew's sleeve.
"Please, if it isn't too much trouble, would you mind coming with me to help me to find the fortune? You see, you are so very big, and oh, will you please?"
George Bellew sat up suddenly, and smiled. Bellew's smile was at all times wonderfully pleasant to see, at least the boy thought so. "Georgy Porgy," said he, "you can just bet your small life I will, and there's my hand on it, old chap." Bellew's lips were solemn now, but all the best of his smile seemed somehow to have got into his grey eyes, so the big hand clasped the small one, and as they looked at each other, there sprang up a certain understanding that was to be an enduring bond between them. "I think," said Bellew, as he lay and puffed at his pipe again, "I think I'll call you Porges. It's shorter, easier, and, I think, altogether apt. I'll be Big Porges, and you shall be Small Porges. What do you say?"
"Yes, it's lots better than Georgy Porgy,"
nodded the boy, and so Small Porges he became thenceforth. "But," said he, after a thoughtful pause,
"I think, if you don't mind, I'd rather call you
Uncle Porges."
You see, Dick Bennet, the blacksmith's boy, has 3 nephews, and I've only got a single aunt, so if you don't mind—"
"Uncle Porges it shall be, now and for ever, amen," murmured Bellew.
"And when do you suppose we'd better start?"
inquired Small Porges, beginning to retie his bundle. "Start where, nephew?"
"To find the fortune."
said Bellew.
"If we could manage to find some, even if it was only a very little, it would cheer her up so."
"To be sure it would," said Bellew, and, sitting up, he pitched loaf, cheese, and clasp knife back into the knapsack, fastened it, slung it upon his shoulders, and, rising, took up his stick. "Come on, my Porges," said he, "and whatever you do, keep your weather eye on your uncle."
"Where do you suppose we'd better look first?"
enquired Small Porges, eagerly. "Why, first I think we'd better find your Auntie Anthea."
"But,"
began Porges, his face falling. "Buts me no buts, my Porges," smiled Bellew, laying his hand upon his new found nephew's shoulder, "buts me no buts, boy, and as I said before, just keep your eye on your uncle." Chapter 5